Hey there, YouTube, coming to you with a new video of my newest acquisition, my 2006, or should I say my son's 2006, Royal Enfield Bullet 500. It's the Electra X model. I'll give you a little backstory about Royal Enfield, but I'm going to need your help. For you guys in the United States who know anything about how these things were imported in the early 2000s, please let me know. I can find like nothing about production numbers in the US. I can't find these things for sale anywhere in the US. I searched all of Facebook Marketplace. There is one other one of this genre in the entire country. I assume it came from a place in Pennsylvania called Uncommon Motorcycles. Can't find anything about them still being in business. But what I have here is a 2006 Royal Enfield Bullet 500 with now, I've just put about 75 miles on it, 660 miles on it. This thing had sat outside, as you can tell, and it was completely unloved, and it hadn't been registered since 2012, according to the license plate that was on it. Bought it. It was extremely easy to work on. I'm going to post a video shortly of me getting it back running again. But one thing about these single-cylinder engines, I mean, these things are very easy to work on. Everything you can see, it's all right here. It's a 500cc single. One carburetor, one carb to clean, really easy to work on. Like, these things are really built in the 50s. So why did I get this for my son? My son really likes my Triumph Thruxton that I've had for about 2 years now. But as a first bike at 17 years old, I just don't think that he should have that much power. So I'm looking for something a little slower, but something with a lot of style. And he really likes the retro British bike theme, and it's cool. I mean, there's such a good story with the glory days of British motorcycling back in the 60s, 50s. The mods versus the rockers, the Ace Cafe, the ton-up boys. Not like this bike's going to do the ton. Even if you drop it out of a plane, it might not hit 100 miles an hour. But, British motorcycling was the motorcycles to have until the 70s. When the Japanese came in with the CB 750s and the Kawasaki 900s, with reliable, multi-cylinder bikes, and it really took the British motorcycle industry for a loop and killed it. It killed all the British companies. Triumph went out of business, BSA, Norton, Royal Enfield went out of business in England. But no one ever told the people in India who were also making them that they went out of business. Well, I'm sure they did tell them, but they just kept quietly making the same British bikes for 50 years. So basically the story goes that back in 1949, the Bullet came out as a 350. Then it came out as a 500 in the early 50s. And then the Indian government bought a pile of them as military bikes. And they went over really well. People really liked them over there. And then the police started to want to buy them. And it was just, it was a very big bike for India at the time. Still is. And so there were import duties in India if you wanted to import something that wasn't made in India. So to get around that, Royal Enfield at first started shipping the parts to a factory they built in India. And then they would assemble it there and sell it as an Indian Royal Enfield. And they did that for a little while until that became cost prohibitive, and they started making the parts in India. They started making their own frames, their own engines. Everything became in-house. So when the British Royal Enfield failed, the Indian one just kept on chugging along. So, using that same 50s era technology, the same old tooling, and they just kept making these single-cylinder engines with a separate transmission. So this is the end of an era. This is an Enfield Electra X, and this is when they first started trying to import them again to Europe. And I guess they made it 49 state legal, except for California. You can get it in the US, but I can't find anything on how many of these things were made. This is a pre-unit construction. I think the unit construction came out in 2010 with the new, basically the new Royal Enfield. So they're supposed to be very good. So it's a separate engine. In this case, it's a 5-speed transmission. along with basically the same old architecture of the engine, but it has an aluminum head. They raised the compression to 8.5 to 1, which this does need super. I tried running regular in it because I heard these things will run on, basically anything that's flammable. I get detonation bad if I don't run super. And it's just a simple bike. It's very torquey. This thing is not fast. All right. I have taken it on the road. I've gotten it to about 70, but this is not what the bike wants. This bike is slow, and that's why I've got it for my son. This bike does not reward being revved out. It is a perfect cruiser on like back roads, 45, 50, 55 miles an hour, maybe 60. Anything after that, it's just not happy. Honestly, it likes the speeds I like to go, which is like 50 miles an hour. Put it on a road, it is so happy to do in 50 miles an hour. And it just chugs along. It's got lots of torque. You don't have to downshift for hills. It is basically a big old single, and it's really much smoother than I would expect a big old single to be. So I'm going to post another video up shortly where I bring this thing back to life. I take it for its first leg ride, although I've put a couple miles on it already, and I've had to change the front tire because it was flat spotted. But yeah, we'll take it for a ride, do a little behind the wheel, what it's like on American roads. I'm really pleased with how this bike rides and feels. There's not a lot of cornering clearance. Those foot pegs hit way early and they don't like to fold up. So you got to be really careful on turns. But I'm going to do this as a tester video. Hopefully somebody can put it out there. I'd love to add it in my next video. If you know anything about the import process of these things in the early 2000s, please let me know. I'd love to hear some stories about it, how it happened, where they came from. If anyone knows the numbers these things were imported in, like I said, I can't find anything about them. You can find them in England. Parts have been a little hard to find. It took me a month to get a clutch cable to get this thing on the road. But I don't know. I really like it. It's a really nice back road bike. From what I've read, some guy doing between 45 and 50 miles an hour when these lean burn engines first came out was able to achieve 106 miles per gallon. So, let's say in real life you're getting 70. That's pretty darn impressive. So please let me know what you think. Any comments you have, any information you have on this, I'd greatly appreciate it. So please subscribe so I can give you my next, you'll be notified of my next video on this. I'm going to follow this bike. We're going to keep it for a little while. It's registered. It's insured. We're going to put some real miles on it and see if these things are reliable. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of things running around in India, being held together with baling wire and shoestrings. So there has to be something, they have to be somewhat reliable. But we're going to find out. Is this something you can keep on the road here in the U.S.? Thanks. Bye.